Good evening. Welcome to the April 9th, 2018 Ahrb meeting. The agenda for tonight is what's first on our list? What's first on the list on the agenda?
Echo Hill Drive. I'm sorry.
1 Echo Hill Drive. Yeah, no, and I think this is great. This is exactly what we were missing at the last meeting, and it puts the building location in context for all of us.
And I also have some pictures. You can see them over there, showing the location of the building. So the adjacent buildings are taller than the prefab building that we are showing.
Okay. Any questions, comments? No?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went by the site this past week. Thank you for accommodating me. And my concerns were alleviated. I think it's going to be out of sight, certainly from the houses along Judson Avenue. Still a little bit concerned about the Hillside Park, which is close. But even then, I walked through Hillside Park today, and I think the sight lines from the park through the trees, there won't be an issue. And of course, that the only time there would possibly be an issue is in the winter time. Otherwise, it's not going to be seen at all. But even in the winter, even from the woods, I think it should be fine.
Okay, great. If there are no other comments, I think this is pretty straightforward. I appreciate you bringing the extra material to clarify that and taking the time to do the walkthrough. I'd like to make a motion. We approve this as submitted. Do I have a second? 50. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Did you want this back, Beatrice?
Next item on the agenda is 130 Palisade Street.
Good afternoon. Design. Over the last, before you, I think we made some really good progress. You had a number of suggestions, which I think you've made each of them. What we basically did is we widened the part of the addition that is, if you will, the tower, made that 12'3" instead of 11'3". And we went with the addition on the back that goes from the top to the bottom. It worked out a lot of good things in the interior. I know it's not really your purview, but I know you guys were concerned about it. I think the stairs now works much nicer. You don't have that strange space to the side. You've got a nice tall space with light coming down to the first floor. So, the elevations, this is the tower that got widened. The back with the central form coming down. Here we added the trellis. On the interior, got rid of the windows above the sliding doors, made the sliding doors into the wall. So that kind of calms things down. I think ties them together fairly well. At this point, materials, what we're talking about is hard plank, clapboard, AZAC, shiplap, AZAC board in certain areas, and we've got a color palette that we want to bring up.
Sure. Go through the whole presentation.
Let me also bring the model. So, although it's subtle, I think it does make a slight difference, widening the tower in terms of the way that it relates. Put everything together at this point. Last time I had different options, so this is the proposal, and I think it holds it together well. The color for the stucco is the Decoplast Dorian Gray. They say it never ages. The clapboard is Hardy Plank aged pewter. Figure that balances with the Dorian Gray, the aged.
Where are you using the stucco?
The existing house.
Oh, that's existing.
Yeah.
Okay, you're
But
not
we're
doing.
we're gonna repair all that and
Okay.
resurface it, so that's the stucco. The color for the clapboard is the clapboard that comes from Hardy Plank. The shiplap and the beadboard is the Benjamin Moore Kendall charcoal, which is kind of a very nice looking gray with that. And then the trim on the additions is the ink, which we showed you last time. The trim on the stucco would be the Kendall gray. So when you look at it from the street, you've got the lighter stucco with the Kendall gray on it, and then you've got the darker siding with the dark trim in the back. And we've got a sample of the metal that would be where the gutter is. The leaders, which is charcoal gray.
These two, most of the house.
Yeah.
This is just trim.
Well,
That is
that's,
this.
the dark one is just the trim on the trim that goes alongside the windows. The surfaces themselves are either the aged pewter or the Kendall gray, depending on which material it is. I figured doing both.
What is all the horizontal siding? That's
That's Hardy Plank,
It's Hardy.
where it's wider, and shiplap, where it's narrower. So when you look at the back, this top floor, that's all shiplap. This is all clapboard. So the shiplap is a smaller piece.
But
Yeah.
shiplap is still Hardy.
No, shiplap is actually AZAC.
Oh,
What AZAC has done is they're now making their center bead, or their beadboard, reversible. And the way they've done the tongue and groove on the beadboard can run horizontally. So you just flip it over and it's the shiplap on the back. So it's a very smooth surface, but it's got a nice, small horizontal. So it's a very smooth looking surface in contrast to the clapboard, which has the texture of clapboard, although this sample is the one that looks like fake wood. And what we would be using is the smooth Hardy Plank. And then the beadboard is used in the zippers And then also in certain strategic locations on that piece in the back.
I think it's too many materials for such a small addition.
Which one would you eliminate and why?
It's just very busy.
Did you get a chance to look at Wits End or you didn't?
I'm sorry?
Last time I mentioned it could be useful to look at Wits End for this, since a lot of the ideas we used here, we used at Wits End, is the corner of Clinton and Broadway.
You're talking about the pink house.
No,
No?
right at the corner of Clinton and Broadway, there was a 1870s mansion that was gonna be torn down. And we bought it, we're going back a couple of years, this is 1981. We bought it, renovated it in 85, and restored the whole exterior. And then we built two buildings in front with 2 units in each one, 4 townhouses in total. There's a little gazebo out the front. We dropped the whole grade down in front so you could actually get down and get cars underneath. It was, it was a kind of heralded project. County gave us an award, and, a lot of people thought it was pretty good. And it has those same 3 materials.
But
That's
it's
why
much,
it was-
but it's a much bigger property.
Yeah.
It's a much bigger project.
Well, that's
I
the
don't,
whole
I don't,
point.
I kind of agree with you in some respects, but I also think maybe we've honed in too quickly on too specific an issue, at the moment, and I would like to get back to that,
I agree.
because I think there maybe
I
are
was
some
digressing.
bigger questions to tackle
Sure.
first, but I do share that subject. I don't know that, could he work it out with the 4 materials? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But I would err on the simpler side, because it's very small.
It is.
So I would just caution you to
Certainly not the smallest house.
keep it sort of simple, but I think just looking at big picture, some of the things that we've talked about, I think have materialized. Pergola structure, yes, but I don't know, there's still a scale proportion problem. The windows and doors on this piece don't relate to the house, the
Well-
existing house. Let me just go, let me finish first. And I think maybe what's the issue that's hardest to love about this is that it still doesn't feel very special, right? You're taking a very unusual approach, and so one of the things that I wanted to convey at the last hearing, and I think I did, was that this thing needs to be a cut above what we normally get when if you're gonna do a small addition to a house, and it follows the recommended design guidelines for how to add an addition on a house, right? You're gonna step down, you're gonna step back, you're gonna build off to the side, you're gonna match roof and sort of keep it all cut. And since you're doing something so unorthodox with an addition, and you're doing this because the owner wants to maintain the garden in the back and wants to capitalize on views of the river, and we understand all that, and we're sympathetic to it, and so we're trying to work with you in a way that allows you to have those things. But in order to do that, you've got to bring to us something, sort of equally high-minded and high-styled, and I'm not seeing that here. I'm seeing something very conventional and not in keeping with that spirit, and so I'd like to see otherwise, but I'm not seeing that here. I may be the only voice with that opinion, but I'd like to hear what the other board members have to say.
I agree with you. I think that this roof still looks like something landed from outer space. One of the comments, for some reason, it just has no sense of proportion to the existing building. From the side, I feel that it still looks Disney to me. I don't know, for lack of
Yeah,
a better
you and I
language.
talked about that
We
the other day. I
did,
still don't understand what Disney means. It's certainly
It's
not
the proportions on there, there's something off on this.
off or different.
It's off. It's
See,
the
I don't
proportion,
agree.
yeah.
I think it's really
It's
worked
personal
out in
opinion.
a very well-balanced way. And I think it achieves a number of good goals in a very direct way. I understand it's very small, but it has a lot of activity that's going on to the extent there's a concern that we have too much. So it's hard to roll back from the idea that we have too many materials on something and then we need to make it more something.
Well, I started off by saying that's a sort of minor digression. The material question at this point is, and the color of the siding, I know that's important to people in the end, but it's hierarchically, it's not where the big questions are now. So I think we can put this aside for just a little bit, the color, the texture. And obviously those things all have to come together at some point, but I'm still looking at massing, roof lines, window door openings, and their relationship to the existing house as being, as missing that thing we were hoping to see. And so until, we get there, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily make sense to nitpick over whether it's 4 materials or 5 or 3 or the particular shade of gray of the new stucco. Which, use whatever gray you'd like. I don't want this board to be about that sort of thing.
Although that's.
It's not, we're not indifferent to material selections, it's just, it's not critical at this point.
Right. The massing that we had before did not try to balance it with the existing structure. That was a comment and a criticism that we got, and we were given a diagram and a suggestion, and we took it seriously, and we exploited it, and we came up with a design that would work well with that. I liked what we had before with the porch on this side that was balancing this in a totally different way and kind of creating a movement around it. But I have adjusted my thinking to be something that is more consistent with the other 3 meetings that the board has had on this project. The idea of the roof being fairly simple, matching the pitch of the front, and changing to a hip instead of a gable was all something that came out of discussions that we had here. I was perfectly happy with the gable on the tower, but I understood that that was something that made people feel like it was too much. So we made adjustments on that. We improved the disconnect between the 2 pieces with the zipper, making that connection articulated with the recess. A lot of care has gone into the detail on
Patty, I
this.
don't want to interrupt you, but the zipper is all well and good, but you still keep it really connected with a brise-soleil on top and a porch that I think is
That was
throwing
a
off.
suggestion at the last meeting.
Keeping a
we
porch was
followed.
never a suggestion of mine, right? I don't think a porch belongs up there at all, really, honestly.
Why would you not want to have a roof there and see the river?
I think, first of all, this faces the street,
Right.
not out towards the river, right?
No, it faces the river.
Oh, the other way. Anyway,
This faces the river and gives you river views.
so does
from there.
windows, right? In a proportion that's consistent with the rest of with the rest of the existing house. Windows do the exact same thing.
They do something similar. They don't give you an exterior space.
But this looks like a more, the character of what sits on top literally looks like it sits on top because there is no relation to the rest of it.
Although when you look at the massing and how it sits back in and doesn't reach to it, you never see one sitting on top of the other.
Listen, the massing may not be what we're, at least it's not
I think
what I'm
that's what we're-
it's not what I'm focusing
Okay.
on. I'm focusing on what it looks like up top based on the windows and the porch and now the trellis and now all this other stuff, right? So if this had, listen, in my opinion, if this had more relation to the existing structure, it wouldn't look like you plopped it on top. Massing, you can't see the windows in a model, right? The massing itself, in my opinion, maybe it looks a little bit more disconnected, but the windows and it looks like a foreign structure because it literally is drawn that way. It's a completely different material. The window relationship isn't there. You have sliding doors on a what year? I mean, the sliding doors that are part of the architectural makeup of the front of this house. It just doesn't go in character with the rest of it. And I think that's where my eye goes.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, I just think that you are wrong. And that what you're saying is actually what I would be saying is the reason that those are the right things to do. Having the windows be different, having the large plate of glass facing the river, I think the trellis was an excellent suggestion made at the last Ahrb meeting. It creates a lightness on the top, and I think it does a lot of good things. That, I think, helps tie pieces together in a very delicate way. It's not a heavy-handed.
I'm sorry, I just gotta, let me interrupt, because somehow this is going in the wrong direction.
Why don't we hear everybody?
Yeah, I
Just
just,
have an opinion, like, Peter, Dave, and myself, and then we can.
sure, go ahead, you take off.
Because,
That's your cue.
look, that's my cue.
Yeah,
I think that there are minor problems to this submission, and I agree with materials, maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure if I buy the idea of horizontal and vertical siding, like, the vertical, I don't really understand what it does, but massing is fine. I'll buy the massing, I'll buy the trellis in the front, I think it's setbacks, it's in scale with the house, and it's fine. There is an issue of windows that I don't understand why a window is lower and higher, and the zipper, but I think it's an easy fix. Why do we have and I'm not gonna comment on the plans, but, the plans are the plans, but like, why do I have a window on the top of a sink? Just for composition, so if there is composition, why is it missing here? Maybe it should be on the base.
I
I'm
think-
just saying that
yeah,
there
there's
is a possibility for a window here.
There
but
could
you
be a window
decide-
there, but I think it
but-
does something
but-
wrong
but
with that.
but you decide to put it on top of a sink, but that's an issue. So
It
changing
doesn't go
the,
together with the exterior.
I don't know, I think that to hang a window from a trim, when you have a window, like it's a very low window, I don't know what they do, but
Well, so
just
we
in
don't get lost.
general terms, my comment is a real improvement from what we had last time. It's going in the right direction. I am not that negative on the proposal like my colleagues here. I think that, yes, there might be an issue of materials, but it's a minor, and I'm willing to work. I don't know with the current scheme. I don't know if the proposed entryway to the back is the right one,
Yeah, we've played with that in 2 different ways.
but I'll give it a pass. That's I'm willing to work with the scheme. Yes.
Well, I don't count as a vote today, but I'll voice
Your
my
opinions
opinion.
on that?
Opinions work.
I'm okay with the massing. I think it's okay. I actually agree about a couple of things. The sliding doors facing the front of the house, that just seems odd to me. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I also agree with the vertical elements on the back. I understand that you're trying to maybe tie that in with the zipper, but I think it's unnecessary. I think I like the vertical element on the zipper, but on the back, I think it's just a little too discordant, a little too busy.
Oh, actually, or just make it all horizontal, the top piece.
Well, I mean, the zipper, I think, wants to be that vertical. We did the
Or not.
Well, the zipper being something that doesn't match either side, I think helps it. If the back addition didn't have the vertical on it, but did that as the same materials wrapping around, I think that'd be fine. you know, I'm not, I liked the playfulness of it, but, that's really not a problem. The sliding glass door in that location is affording you an uninterrupted view of the Hudson River, which is a pretty fun, valuable thing. It's also a element that you really have a tough time seeing unless you go up in one of the buildings across the street. To be
What
able
about windows without panes on either side of the door? I just think a sliding door facing the front of the house is, I just think it's odd.
It's an unusual
It's-
thing. I don't know that we've done a lot of it.
Yeah, and maybe the windows could be a little bit more uninterrupted, I'm not sure. I'm just throwing.
When you say
Well, just without the panes, the double hung, I don't know if that's a double hung window or,
Yeah, those are double hungs, and the idea is we're picking up the detail on the front in that one spot, having a very minimal hunting so that we have one vertical and one horizontal. I think it makes it look a little less, it gives it a sense of scale, I think. It
Okay.
helps.
Your head heights are really all over the place, as Brandon pointed out. This is low, this is high, this is even lower, or because you're dropping this down. I have a question for you. Is there some way that you can cut this mass so that the middle portion looks more like a tower?
I mean, of
Where
course,
you
there's a way.
drop this down and then come back with this, so that this is, it just looks like a hat sitting on top of, something that was,
Is the
just
goal
look-
to lower the plate of the?
And another
addition?
question I have is that I understand that you want the view, but look at where you're cutting this. Anything higher than that, why do you have it so high? That's what's throwing the proportion off on this. Is there a rationale for this height over here?
Only that we were trying to get the trellis to fit above the 8-foot doors.
Understood. So now what I'm saying is that if you were to bring the whole mass down, would there be a problem?
No, we could probably drop that about 1.5 feet.
And
without
if
any
you were to
problem.
really try doing that, where you bring
I
this
worry
in
about that.
lower?
I worry about that.
Have you tried it? I mean, I don't know, I'm
we've
asking you.
done, I do reams of sketches. We've tried different, I mean, we've tried a shed roof on the back, it was an idea, I didn't really like it.
Shed roof
Instead of a hip, it was a shed so that.
over here?
Yeah, all you would see here is the eave coming straight across, so this side is high, and then it would drop to the back, effectively the same height as what it is now, but
Like a
sloping
salt
from.
box? I don't understand.
Not a salt box.
Oh, well, you have it like a salt box now, so, sort
Well,
of.
in that one section.
that's one
yeah.
section.
But it would be more like a shed roof, high on the riverside, low on the back. So it would just be one plane. I thought it really looked too modern going with the existing mass, and I thought the hip tied it together well. We do have, Mike was as true as what we had looked at. The idea of having the roof drop down as much as 1.5 feet is something we can look at. We can certainly go with shorter windows.
Just,
Drop the windows down to the height
if
of
you
the.
can, if you can, I don't know, try it one more time. You're the designer, I don't want to tell you,
Okay. Excuse me if I think I've gotten a lot of good suggestions. So I know nobody's telling me what I have to do, but I'm listening,
but-
and there are a lot of good suggestions. I could easily see dropping the windows and the plates down so that the 8-foot slider and the windows align instead of being different height, and that would bring this down. It would also mean you really notice this a lot less from the street. And right now, you will not.
I think it just looks very busy for no reason,
What we're proposing looks busy, or what in
Yeah, it's
combination
like
with the house?
all over the place, I mean, this is all, it's just too many things going on in a small
It's a
project.
challenge, it's a challenging mass. It's the nature of the beast.
Okay.
It's like, all I'm saying is, we come to this point because the deal is like A and B with a Z. And that's the massing that we accepted. So now we're bringing into,
We
No,
haven't
I'm
accepted
sorry.
anything
That-
yet.
That's not the
Okay,
case. No,
I'm
we said,
I'm
no.
saying
Yeah, we
no,
didn't accept anything.
Let's clarify that, because
Okay.
that is incorrect. At the last meeting,
All I'm saying is
we
we
discussed a
have-
number of other possible massing questions. And what we have is a slight refinement of one of them. And so
Correct.
and some of the
One
things
we
that I had
had
asked
last
about,
time.
which were different massings.
Right.
For that
Don't
factor,
work for this program.
did not, we have not seen, and so
Nor will we do something that makes it happy to the Ahrb, but doesn't work with our client's program, makes no sense.
Sure, and if, there's what you have now is challenged in many respects. I don't think it's simply a question of detail and window size. I don't agree with that.
No, I understand. I'm afraid,
I don't disagree that it's an unusual way to approach this house, given its almost, who are the people of the Wizard of Oz? But given its munchkin scale, we've done, I guess, 10 houses over in Shadow Lawn in Hastings, which were houses that are not unlike this. They almost feel like they were built as three-quarter scale houses. If you realize, as Ahrb was talking about the window that he's talking about being very, very low in the zipper, that's the height of the other windows in the existing house at the head. That's not lower than them, it matches. So when you see that other window that's up high, yes, it's up high above the sink, but it's above the mirror. So it actually resolves.
Okay, so I rephrase the issue. We're working with the scheme. I am working with the scheme. And the only thing, my only comments is based on this idea of making linearity vertical, makes this thing more extruded.
You think it'd be better if we emphasize the horizontal?
I don't think that the scheme benefits from a long, narrow piece. I remember that I was mentioning that if you cut it
Right.
here and you make the
Well,
overhang.
challenges would be cutting it here.
Whatever.
Well, that's a
If you-
difference,
if you-
because
when-
it's
okay,
in
If
proportions.
you cut the idea, if you bring it all the way down, the rear facade is really out of proportion. So if you cut it, and you put like a, porch, or that's what we were discussing last time, I think, that will break up the, this proportional element, which is like almost a wall element. That's where my comments are going, but I'm working with
Right.
the premise that there is an existing house, and there is a tower wall, whatever you want to call it, which is like a plaque, like a plate that holds the house together. In terms of the sliding elements or the front or the trellis, I think it's workable and it's successful. The rest is the rear facade, but I'll take it as a rear facade, which is a very difficult.
Yeah, my concern,
I'm sorry about the. I'm not saying when we led you to bring the scheme, it's something that we've been discussing to be developed, but I think it's being developed.
and I understand the challenge. I mean, when I do crit work at places like Columbia, and I'm working with a student, and it's, 2 weeks into the program, and I'm saying, did you try this? Have you tried that? When they come back 2 weeks later with the scheme, and they've used one of the things I asked, did you try it? And I say, I don't think this works. They're saying, well, you told me to do this. I'm saying, no, I didn't tell you to do it. I suggested you try it. So I understand, that sensation. At the same time, we're not doing something because we've been told to do it. We've taken that on, we've evaluated it, and we've come up with a scheme which I think accomplishes not only the program, not only the client's needs in terms of keeping it a tight, smaller scoped element, but also deals with a very unusual small house, preserving its character with something behind it that I think will just add character to the neighborhood. I don't see this as anything that's going to make the existing buildings around that feel like they somehow no longer make sense. I think this will be a nice element on that street, and as such, meets the requirements and the obligations of this board.
We agreed to hear from everyone. Dale, do you have anything?
When I look at the top level, I think that, first of all, as far as massing goes, I think the massing is moving in the right direction. When I look at the top level, a proportion of the openings on the doors are almost double the size of those openings below.
Right.
And it makes that piece look like the dominant piece. I think that solving that elevation across and tying it together, maybe it's a continuous portico across the entire facade, similar to the portico at the bottom of the house. The portico, this piece at the top is out of proportion with this lovely little piece at the front.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if there might be something in taking that piece, playing with pulling that piece up into here and
Right.
making it a little bit more delicate. I also agree with the sliding door imagery on the face. Not that sliding doors can't be right, but I think if they had muntins or mullions within it, and you broke the scale of that door, and it
Reinforce that.
looked more traditional or more like the other
Yeah.
openings, it could be more successful.
If the windows are reduced in height, and because that gets brought down.
I think that's a problem,
I think-
the line of the window is also popping all over. I mean, I think that's something
Right.
that's, every one of
These-
these other windows on the
Yeah,
other floors
so
are
if
like.
this drops down to that, this becomes small enough that the divisions here, I think then could work with this. And that could have divisions in it, which
That could be.
would definitely give that scale. When we looked at this,
Mhm.
we looked at that beam,
Right.
similar scale. So I'm a little concerned if this went all the way across,
Maybe
it
it's
might be
all,
too
or
much.
maybe it's sent, there's just something odd about this piece
Maybe-
versus that
Maybe
piece.
that, picking this in character, have
Yeah.
these openings in character with this.
right?
Yeah.
Might help.
What,
Tie it
yeah,
together.
is that just the window gets dropped, or are you bringing this element over?
No, I'm just saying,
See, I think-
making the windows in character.
Right,
To
like
really
this-
wrap them up.
Yeah, I think we're already onto that. I think the idea, as I think Dipti, you were suggesting
And
dropping that down?
Pulling this down.
So I
You
think-
can pull the whole
Yeah.
thing down.
Right, I
Because
think that, bringing
that-
that
And it's
down
going
helps
to,
that,
yeah.
and I think that would tie together fairly well. Hi.
She's only the owner.
Simone is not feeling great tonight. I don't know that this is helping, but,
I'm gonna breathe it in.
so.
Let you know what does.
Basically, when we had the taller windows like this, we were lining them up with windows above the sliders. We had sliders that were 6'10". When we got the idea with the suggestion of the trellis, we raised the sliders and we eliminated the windows above them, but we left these windows at that previous height. So in a way, it's vestigial. If we take this 8-foot height and bring that across for the window, and we then drop this down so that we can kind of integrate all of this stuff and make it just seem that much smaller. It's funny because the difference between this space to here and this space to here, that is actually a difference in proportion. And that would make this work in a slightly different way that would not disrespect the intent that we've been trying to work with. And I don't see it making any, here probably improves it. On the sides, I don't think it has any negative, so I think all that would be able to work. And then Ahr's concept, as he mentioned at that last meeting, he would, he has suggested that this massing end down there, and that we then have like 2 supports or something to carry it, so this is back in. We do have the other closets, so we would lose the closets flanking the door, and at that point, you don't have this element on the back, which simplifies that a bit, and then this element, it would just read very differently. It doesn't read as a tall element going from grade all the way to the roof. It reads as an element that's on the back of the house.
Come down to here. That one?
Yeah.
Come down the stairway, you run it directly into the door that opens up.
You would have the
No,
overhang,
we
right?
have that,
You would have the overhang.
yeah, and what we've got on the first floor, if I can figure out, yeah, you're going up here. The door would swing in here.
Yeah, because it's now central.
But you wouldn't, you'd still have the door in the middle, so you've got, that door's not gonna swing and bang somebody's head. No, that works.
Just a little.
Not gonna bang with it
The
all.
kid that runs down the stairs. Yeah.
We still have space, closet.
Yeah, we got closet, we have pantry, we have closet.
That's nice.
You know, so I'm sure we can make all of that work.
You can look at it.
I know, that's, you know, but there,
It's a minor point, I think.
there is,
Not the one, you know, it's not the issue that I think we're
yeah.
first and foremost concerned about. I think it's
Though
It's
none of those
making-
things adjust that thinking that you had?
the
No,
back,
it's-
I'm only talking about this question of the back, whether you
Oh.
cut it or don't cut it.
Yeah.
Look at it if, you know, fine. But I think the bigger question for most of us is that it's not coalescing into some kind of comprehensive, holistic, new addition. I heard your point.
Yeah. I'm
I
not
get
gonna say
it, I heard it.
But also,
You don't need
it's
to,
3
please
to
don't.
3 right now, right? When you said most of
To
them.
some degree, we're all saying the same thing, which is that whether it's windows or massing or proportion, this is not coming together in the way that we needed to in order to find it, you know, an approvable
Can I ask something?
project. So you can take some of the suggestions, or you can run with some of your own, but I think that it needs work. It's just not, it's not there, Patty. You gotta work
I
it
think
more.
there's some good
There's problems with
suggestions.
windows, there's problem with roof lines, there's problem with massing, and maybe you need to address all those things. Maybe you can do it by just addressing two
No,
of the
I'm
three,
gonna
I'm
look
not
at all
sure.
the things that we're talking about.
That's on you to figure out and come
Right.
back and get it right, and it's not on us to give you the right window height or, you know.
I've never
Because-
suggested that.
Well, you started off with that, and that,
I never
and,
did.
and so
No,
I don't.
That's not how I think.
That's not how our, that's
Right.
not
We've
what our
never-
criticism
we've never
is, you
done
know,
that.
we tell you there are issues, and then you know, it's on the applicant to go back and figure them out, not on us to tell you how to do it. So I'm not sure what's right, but
We've gotten a bunch of good suggestions
It's
that we're
missing some
certainly
things.
willing to take a look at and see if those things work. I like the idea of bringing the roof down, lining the windows up with the doors, doing something. I think the trellis does work. I have to see what impact this, you know, doing those changes makes to it. I'll take another look at Ahr's thoughts on the back. If I was able to, well, here, I'll do the easiest one. If this matched where you drew the line, which happens to match where the zipper eave is, it's a natural. It works great. It's got the right proportion of space underneath it. I'm concerned still that it's gonna feel squat, because where the second floor really is, you only got a 7'6" ceiling on the first floor, so I'm worried that that's gonna feel lower and difficult in this proportion. But we'll take a look at that and see if it works. In the end, the goal we have here is to have something that works for our client. And
of
it's
course,
something that
come on,
we love.
we don't need to overstate the obvious.
Well, but-
I'm not telling you it
You
needs to
sure?
be smaller, I'm saying it
I-
needs to work well with the existing house, and right now it doesn't. I'm not saying make it smaller,
I didn't,
I'm not saying, you could make it taller and it'll work
Michael,
better.
I didn't say you said it, make it smaller. I said it has to work for my client, it has to work for me, and then it has to be acceptable to the architectural review board, so that it meets the powers that you have as a board. The objective here is not to make it something that you like. It's not. It has to be
It's not,
acceptable.
this is
to
about personal
standards.
preference, this is about guiding projects in a way that are harmonious with the existing building and their context. And right now, it's not. This is not about what I like, whether I like a window with muntins or without muntins. That's not the question. The question is, right now, this is a disharmonious addition to
Michael,
the
you're
house.
way
They
off
need
base.
to work on
The
this.
words, they don't, if you wanted to tell me it's not there yet, that you think some of these ideas need to be investigated to get it
That's what I
there.
keep saying.
No, when you say it's a disharmonious,
It is.
It is.
No,
I
it's not.
agree with Michael.
it's not right.
Well,
And it's certainly not so disharmonious to be detrimental to the values of the property owners in the area. So at some point, we're gonna potentially have to come back to that kind of thinking, which is not where I wanna go. I'd much rather deal with it here in terms of the aesthetics, work that in, but we're not gonna just keep fishing with things.
That's what I'm
to
trying to
right.
do, and that's what everyone here is trying. Everyone has given me some suggestions. Like I said before, it's on you to come back and show us how this can work. This is not working.
Which we are gonna try and do.
Is this before the planning board?
No, we've gotten approved.
You've got approval from planning? Okay,
Yeah.
good. So we're a full application. Does anyone have anything to add?
No, I think I just agree with Brandon about the doors. I'm assuming that if you can make that proportion big. To me, it looks like Darth Vader
I
right
think-
now, so. Seriously, look at it, look at that elevation.
Disney and Darth Vader, two different, they're like.
It goes together.
Yeah, they are.
The idea of dividing, putting divisions into the glass doors, I think would work. I also think having glass doors, where I normally would not be thinking, I'm not thinking going to sliding doors. I don't do a lot of sliding doors. In this instance, given the opportunity for that view from the space, with doors that no one will ever see, I think it's a great solution. I think what it does is it gives them a large glass expanse at a relatively, not reasonable price, because they're ridiculously expensive, but much less expensive than if I were trying to customize something and come up with something that would hopefully work as well.
Okay. See what you can do with that. And I think this needs a lot of work too.
Well,
It just, you have this puny little roof on.
well, I think, it sounds like if we can work something out that, as Ahrb is suggesting that, maybe it's a quirky solution that has that coming down and there's still some kind of a skirt on it that raises the height of that up so that you don't feel that the height of the element is the bottom of the second floor, which is so close to the ground. There might be some way of making that still work, so that it feels comfortable. But that's for, as Michael has said, that's for us to figure out.
I mean,
and see what we
again,
can do.
the same thing with the materials and the windows and, it's just, so.
Look, to leave this on a, not a negative note, I think there is a lot of potential. And I'm very curious on this thing that will be built to see if it's successful or not. I don't think that this harmonious system was the word used. I don't think so. I think it's too big of a word and too subjective. But at the same time, I think it's a great opportunity. I still think that there is a lot of playfulness that needs to be mined, and there is a lot of potential for something maybe unusual. That we are, sometimes we find surprises in awkward massing.
Unusual mass. I don't know that this is
Awkward means like, something that gives a good surprise. It's not necessarily in a negative way. I'm saying it, it's a good surprise. So in other words, just to summarize my point, I think that there is potential. I think that the back needs work. I think that what Dale is drawing is to have like a reading of,
right.
a consistent reading. The massing in the back, needs work. It's too much of a vertical, and
The massing or the materials?
materials
Okay.
makes it worse in terms of this linearity
I think the zipper still wants to be vertical.
to the zipper
Yeah.
anyway. you want.
Yeah, let me ask Dale one question. I'm not trying to prolong the meeting, but he's wrong. If those were the trellis, normally I would always do a trellis coming out from the house. If the trellis elements were running parallel to the house, like in other words, what you've colored in red, that was the actual trellis work, so that the beams were on the sides. Is that something you think would work? Because I'm concerned about when I drop this down, how I get the room for it. So that would seem to be a fairly interesting way to.
It might,
It's
only to
stronger.
the extent that it might provide you with that horizontal element.
A stronger horizontal, yeah.
Break it up.
Yeah.
You might
Yeah,
want to
that's a-
try
that's a-
it out, is all I can say.
But I gotta
You're gonna have
tell
a
you,
weird-
that
but
is
you-
not a usual way of
Yeah,
doing it, right?
it's gonna
That's a
be-
It's not, I
quirky,
agree.
Interesting.
It's
way
gonna have to
look
get
at it.
really large, because you're you're gonna have to go outside the windows, right? I
No,
don't know.
In other words, what's horizontal now is the beam holding up the trellises. The beams would be going between the post and the house, and the trellis would be that horizontal member. So that gives me the room to drop the roof down.
Yeah, maybe that could work. And you know, I agree with you. I mean, the conclusion we came to last time was that you had an unusual problem. It required some unusual thinking, and some more playful thinking. And there was a potential for a really fun, exciting, kind of maybe unique typology for the village.
Absolutely.
And I think we're all excited and happy to see new things with new forms and new ways of
That is
looking
very
at
much
things.
the spirit that we're approaching this.
Yeah, and I want that, and I want it to succeed, and I like your program, and I like how you're approaching this, and so I'm not opposed to this thing in concept or in practice. I'm just saying it needs. It's not special enough. You've got to do something unusual here,
Okay.
and you're just not doing that yet. And I think the step, you know, the sort of leap you took from the first meeting to the second one.
It's probably the first to the third. The second one was kind of.
That's right. I wasn't at.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm speaking selfishly. My
The
first
second one you were
meeting
here, yeah.
to my second meeting was a really important step.
Okay, good.
You took a very large step forward from something that I thought was not in any way feasible to something I could see the end of the road.
Okay, good.
And that was important, and yet, I felt, and I hoped I had conveyed this last time, that we needed to see another sort of equal leap forward in terms of, you know, in terms of really pulling it together. And all I see is sort of a little bit of a refinement, mostly, you know, sort of adding,
No doubt.
adding a layer of detail on top of it.
But-
And maybe this is my own, maybe I didn't make that clear enough, and so that's why I'm going on and on about this, but
You're
but
refining it in
you
a
just,
positive way,
you
so
need a
everyone's
lot,
happy.
it's gotta take that next big step, I
Yeah.
think.
Hi, I'm Simone, the property owner.
You have to take the microphone and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Simone, the property owner from 130 Palisades. I appreciate everything that's being said, but when you're saying a bigger step, I heard you last time also, Dipti, that you felt maybe by making this a smaller or, you know, playing with the width of the structure in the back. We looked at that as well. It doesn't work for us. So my concern right now is on this, you know, we can play with the windows, and I think there's some really good suggestions, what I picked up here to make it look, you know, easier to digest, thinking more horizontal versus vertical. I get all of that, but for me, when you speak about a leap, does that mean the structure itself has to change as dramatically as we did from your first to the second meeting? And in that case, I'm concerned because I'm not sure that I have that in me, because that's gonna be another 3 rounds. And
We have this.
I'm a little bit struggling between you're moving in the right direction, here's some, you know, refinements and changes, I can work with it, and it looks like Disney, which, with all due respect, I find words like that very offensive as a personal private homeowner. I get when you say it's too quirky, I don't get it, like all those things, I'm totally fine. But it's a little difficult to comprehend what that means. So if it's positive or negative criticism, I can deal with it, but with something that's so subjective, it's hard, but again, with all due respect. So what I'm trying to say is if we are talking about making this a very different structure to make it a leap, I'm not getting where that needs to go. So if you could
I'm not talking about
clarify?
that, what I would think.
Because that's not where
I'm
I
not
would
seeing
go,
that-
but I'm worried that that's where we have to go, and I'm not sure that where we can
If I
go.
can, just tell me if I'm wrong on this. It's a matter of one man leap, or another man step, mankind, whatever the thing on the earth, moon is, dropping this down, making this 12-foot 3 wide instead of 11-foot wide changed the proportion. Dropping this down 1'6" and changing the way the trellis works and the way the windows relate is a fair, in the scale of this small project, is a fairly large
Yes,
leap. of
maybe
change.
my question is it?
They don't know
Yeah,
until they see it.
No, and I
I'm not
totally
asking
understand that
you,
you can't solve
yeah, I'm gonna
it
answer your
and-
question.
Yeah,
I'm not asking that you cut the massing in half and you
Yeah.
create a tower that's 1/3 the side of the building off to the
Yeah.
side. I understand that you're adding a laundry room and a studio.
Yeah.
There's no room here for you to cut out half the square footage,
Yeah.
and that's not the question I'm asking.
okay.
But, so can it be achieved with some of the techniques that we're talking about? Probably.
I'm thinking,
You have to wield them intelligently and creatively.
as we always try.
And
And
Simone,
so
one of the
I
suggestions of.
I think, but also one more thing, and I think this is something that I understand is maybe a little bit frustrating, but if you set yourself up for a very complicated problem, you have also created that for yourself.
Of
So you've
course.
created this complicated process.
Self-inflicted, right.
And so the fact that you're going to have to go through more than what you would go through if you were putting a 1-story long addition at the back of your house, which doesn't work for you. People come in with those kind of things all the time and they're out the first meeting because it's a no-brainer. But you're doing something that's complicated, and so you've got to contend with that.
Right.
So, okay, that's all, I think that makes me feel better, because coming in here several times, I wasn't sure where the leap, like, what is the leap? So if it's within scale, then I think then we can work with it, because we talked about sliding.
All I was saying was that by pulling the roof down, you'll actually save some money because it's less material. And the headers and everything is, on a smaller project like this, it's just much easier.
Could be, yeah. It could be, we'll see. I look at small projects like this, and every single thing you're touching is cost. When I'm doing a 6,000, 8,000 square foot house in Irvington, a cut of a foot makes a big difference.
Exactly.
Because it gets multiplied. Here, I think one of you, it was actually the reverse comment, when I was arguing about making this 11 feet, instead of making it wider, I know one of you say, come on, it's 34 feet by 1 foot. You're adding 34 square feet, and you're telling me that that's gonna change things in the price? I said, of course not, it won't do that. So that's why we widened that out, and it actually made things work better. We could change the stairs then, which I know it's not part of the issue, but Ahrb did not like the stairs coming up to the top with this weird space alongside. Now we've got it where it opens up, so when you stand at the top, you're looking all the way down to the first floor, which I think is kind of more fun thing. Okay.
So do you see this?
Yeah,
Works.
that's,
I
I
don't
think
know, works for
that
me.
makes a big, and Simone, if you look at this, I know it doesn't sound like it's a huge difference, but when you see how that drops down, it really does
Well,
make it.
hold on.
Right, it's more of a, it's almost becomes a second zipper that you've got this between the roofs, as opposed to there's a whole story that's going.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And just to finish this, you see this sketch of the tower.
Yeah,
So,
but
via,
of course, I'm looking at that and thinking you just sketched exactly what we've designed.
well, but the trick is, there is a lot of representation.
Yeah,
This is a pencil, but the pencil drawing is that the items are clear and the intentions are
Right.
more defined. I don't know.
well, that's what's happened here, which I think you've gotten us to do the right thing.
I
Did you
don't-
shave off your beard? Okay, because I couldn't figure it out.
I think, I also have to say, I agree with Yair about this window in the bathroom. It's like, it's right in front of your mirror. It's your mirror.
Well, no, it's
No, it's at the
above
door.
your
Well, I mean,
head.
but
But if you have two sinks, why do you put in one?
Because that would look good on the outside, because it centers it in the massing.
It's-
And it's, when you're standing here, it's above your head, so the mirror comes across.
the previous
This
item.
window is
Oh,
at
so
the
that's
height of all the
done. We
others,
don't
which
need
is
to
6
make
feet
that.
above the floor at the top. And they're distinctly different in different.
I know, but we all see something kind of off with some of the window height.
Something that's not there.
Yeah, just like, you know, if it's if it's new, you can get it right. You know, you have the old house, you have
Yeah.
a bunch of funky things, you have to deal with it, but it needs another iteration to pull it together, because you know, it's a big blank, this very large window, this sort of mini window, and then a big blank piece of wall. Again, it's just, I
And the
don't know,
blankness, agreed, the blankness is not something I normally.
same thing back here, you know, you got too much going on, too many disparate sizes and heights, and,
Two.
yeah, but you've got, no, I mean, there's things that, one,
Yeah, one of
two,
those-
three, I mean, everything is, like, nothing aligns, it needs
It all
some,
actually aligns.
it's very good.
you can take some line and find some place where it intersects the other window, but there's no harmony there. Again.
I think it's like
That,
Octel, I think.
you know, I'm becoming
You're not, you're expressing your feelings, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comments before we
I think we've said
wrap up?
enough.
Nothing has been said, changes anything you're thinking, you want to just go more this way or go that way or something? Do you think the comments are helpful in the direction that you were mentioning?
I agree that the massing in its concept, right, I think has been refined in a way that's going in the right direction, if not at where it needs to be,
Okay.
right? But the window setup, the alignment of those things,
And that
the
top,
slider,
the height of that, yeah.
I think that really just, it's not harmonious because it literally still looks like it sits on top, right? Because of the difference in what those materials are and how it looks. So if that's all tied together and has some relation to the other house, to the existing, at least tie it in, I think
Yeah, I wouldn't-
it might be a better
It has to be careful.
approach.
But I think dropping it down, it'll make a difference. Just the fact that it eliminates one of the things that's not harmonious. It's not matching. So maybe with a couple of those tied together, maybe that gets it to where people are more comfortable. Because I do want this to be good. I see what you guys have to deal with on a regular basis. This is not that.
I agree with
This
Mike's
is a
sentiment too, that
really
this could be a
good
very special
project.
project if all those elements tie together. And right
This
now,
is getting something to be like the
just
other
needs a
work
little
we've
bit.
done in town, which is really terrific. And I do really want you to stop by and look at what's that. Because it was one of the first major projects we did in town, and it took a direction. And it changed things and how people saw things in the village. They hadn't done anything like that before. And all of a sudden, the village got a whole decade of people kind of elevating their game.
maybe
They saw what could be done.
when was that?
It started in 1980, I bought it in 81, I did the renovation of the house in 85, I started construction on a new house in 87.
We got it.
We don't know.
We don't want to sit, it's on the corner of Clinton. You've seen it a million times, you know.
I guess the only reason why I asked that is maybe it's time for another step. And not going back
Thank you.
the way that
There
it
you
was
go.
then.
Oh, I'm not
And
just-
step above that,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So that's why I asked
that's
you when
fine.
it was done, because that was done a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? To the semi-new millennial
One thing
generation
I've
that I
never-
unfortunately represent.
Which is a good
So-
group to represent. So I don't have any problem with that. I've never traveled on what I did before.
Okay, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Motion to continue this to the next, EIR seconds. Unanimous. See you next time. Motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Seconds.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.